Tim?
Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, there is no question ACC is in crisis. It is in the deepest crisis it has ever been in, and I suspect it's the deepest crisis that any government agency or department has been in for decades and decades, probably unprecedented in the history of the New Zealand public sector, but perhaps the exception of the New Zealand Tourism Board under Brian Mogridge, but that's a different story. So that address we've just heard from that member just frankly defies credulity. There is no question that people who have been on ACC legitimately, properly, trying to be rehabilitated, entitled to compensation, entitled to treatment, have been pushed off it when there was no grounds to do so. They've been pushed off it not because they are rehabilitated, not because they are capable of returning to independent living and without support, not because they're ready to go back to their old job, but because this government introduced an incentive scheme to claims managers and the management of ACC to push them off, to make the figures look good and the bottom line look better. Under this government, ACC has lurched in a direction far removed from its founding principles, the principles of community responsibility, of proper rehabilitation, of injury prevention. We now know how this crisis has unfolded. It started with Nick Smith's declaration of a crisis in 2009, a financial crisis that didn't exist. Didn't matter that it was generating surpluses of $1 billion a year, Ms Collins. It didn't matter, Mr Young, that it has reserves then of $11 billion, now of about $18 billion. So they declared the crisis, they hiked levies totally unnecessarily, and what we now know from the most recent media reports is that there was a crook deal done between Nick Smith and the management of ACC to set up incentives to drive long-term claimants off ACC. Now let's be under no illusion. What ACC has done in the last 3.5 years has been done at the direction and directive of this government. It is totally the political decision and directions of this government that has driven ACC. And I say to those who want to exculpate the present minister and the previous minister that they miss the point completely. ACC has acted in accordance with the instructions of its political masters, and we should not let those political masters off the hook, whether it's Nick Smith or Judith Collins. And those who are looking to the present political masters and the present minister for a solution to the current problems are looking in the wrong place. I make no apology for that. Let's see what happened under this great regime. So the surpluses that at around 2008 were about $1 billion a year. Last year, $3.5 billion. Reserves now at $18 to $19 billion. But the price of that has been paid by the claimants, the long-term claimants. They've been subject to a brutal managerialism that has taken over ACC. The number of long-term claimants has gone down 25% in 3 years. Now, what on earth logic applies there, that in 3 years, a quarter of your long-term claimants are miraculously rehabilitated and can go back to work? Jesus couldn't do as good a job as that. In the 5 years, by way of comparison, in the 5 years to 2008, there were 12% of claimants went on ACC, from ACC, onto benefits because they were rehabilitated and there was no job for them. In 2010, it was 19%. What is the miraculous remedy? It is not because rehabilitation improved, it's because they've been shoved off it. Let me read from some correspondence I've had just in the last couple of days. It doesn't take much to cite evidence when it comes to ACC. I just dip in at random to my in-pile for the current day and you get something like this. So here's what this Wellingtonian said. At the end of January 2010, I had an accident coming down a ladder while off on holiday. When I first applied for ACC, they queried whether it was due to any pre-existing conditions and whether I could get anyone else to help me apart from ACC. That's January 2010. Fast forward to the end of 2011. Old case manager went, a new case manager was appointed. And at our first meeting, after introducing herself, she simply stated that her job was to get me off ACC. Alarm bells rang. Where was the rehabilitation? Where was the job training? That question is being asked by hundreds of innocent New Zealanders up and down the country right at this moment because ACC is in crisis and they are paying the cost. The issue on ACC is no longer just one of confidence in ACC. It is about how the issues are handled politically. And the present minister is not up to it. The top echelons of the organisation have gone.
Honourable Mary Ann